over the rainbow.
Hey, story makers, and welcome to Tellwell the Podcast, where we're inviting you into the conversations that we get to have every day with our story makers. Our story makers are our clients and our friends. You're the story makers. We're the storytellers. My name's Max Crane. I'm the chief storyteller here at Tellwell Story Co. And with me is one of my very favorite storytellers, Duncan Williamson.
It's another great day to be in the podcast studio.
It is another great day to be in the podcast studio. Today's conversation is one that I'm really excited about. There is a really great design studio just down the road in Bismarck, North Dakota called The Good Kids. They win a ton of awards, and we're going to be talking today with Ashton from Good Kids.
Yeah, first of all, let's say a big happy birthday.
Happy birthday!
The Good Kids just celebrated 5 years in business, which is super exciting. Yeah, big shout out to those guys for 5 years in business. I think we've talked before a lot about like how talented the agencies, the companies, the creative studios are in this upper Midwest area. And I think these guys are just another like perfect example of that out of Bismarck, which it's funny. We talk about, it's just down the road. To a lot of people, it's almost 3 hours away, which is a funny thing. But
in North Dakota, that is just down
in this
the
part
road
of the country, we're practically neighbors. But yeah, they do awesome work out there. They've done some really cool brands and rebrands. I know one of my favorite things, I love packaging design, whether it's beer cans or products off the shelf. They've done some cool ice cream stuff that I've seen before. They have this ice cream brand that was really
We talk about that actually in the podcast.
Yeah, so I'm really excited for this episode. I think they do some awesome work.
They do. So at Tellwell, we're on a mission to become the finest creative studio in the Midwest. And what I will tell you is by getting and having to compete and grow a community of great creative studios like the Good Kids, like iron sharpens iron, and what you're going to hear today is a masterclass in customer service and leadership and how to grow a creative studio. You know, Tellwell's been around for 10 years. Good Kids has been around for 5 years. I feel like if I would have had just a smidge of Ashton's incredible leadership skills 5 years ago, I can't imagine where we would be today. So I'll stop putting myself down and Ashton up. But without further ado, let's give it up for Ashton. To Tellwell the Podcast. We're so excited to have you here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Ashton is the strategy director and the co-founder of The Good Kids, which is one of my very favorite design studios based out of Bismarck, North Dakota, just down the road, just down I-94. So, Ashton, how the heck are you?
I'm doing great. I'm loving summer. Of course, it's busy with weddings and celebrations, but it's a good time of celebration. So
Absolutely. So Ashton, for people that don't know you, and I don't know why they don't know you, because Ashton and her team, they produce like literally some of my favorite content that I think we're producing in this entire state. And I'm not just blowing smoke. For those people that don't know you, maybe don't know The Good Kids, can you give the quick primer? Who the heck are you?
Yeah. So like you said, we're a design studio located in downtown Bismarck. We love Bismarck, but we build brands for disruption, connection, and good. And so we work with a lot of different industries, but our kind of favorites, if you will, don't tell the others, are consumer product goods and tourism. That's kind of where we really see brands come to life in like three-dimensional physical spaces. And we just love getting to interact with our brands in that way.
That's incredible. I love how succinctly you did that. It's like you've been working on this for a while and like you help brands figure out their own strategy, and maybe you did it to yourself.
Trying to. That's the hard part about a branding studio is you have very high expectations for yourself.
I totally get that. And it was just recently that we brought on a senior designer, and she has really made some of my like Tellwell dreams come true, because like I don't know if we've ever talked about this. So I'm a designer by trade. Like I went to school for graphic design. My first jobs out of college were all design related. And so I have these like ridiculously high expectations, but I've also like done the thing where I haven't been a practitioner for many moons. And so I can't actually execute on my own vision anymore, which is problematic.
Yeah, well, it's almost, at least for me, it was almost like a a gift / curse earlier on because I would have all these side hustles because I could execute on my visions. And now I've kind of taken more of the business side roles of the company. So I'm probably a little bit less dangerous at this point.
I love that. So can we kind of like jump back to the beginning? How did the Good Kids start? Where did the name come from? Tell us all the things.
All the things. Oh boy. So let's see. How did the Good Kids start? Well, I guess it started with an idea I had because at the time I was working at CoSchedule. Shout out to them, know and love all the team there. And I was really part of their heyday from 6 to 60 employees. And so it was quite the first job experience. And I learned so much being around Justin and Garrett and these startup owners and seeing entrepreneurship front and center and being on the marketing team and seeing how it works. But I reached a point where I learned, your first job, you're really learning a lot about yourself in that season, and design is so broad. There's so many different avenues that you can take it. And so I really learned about myself that I love branding. And when you're at an in-house marketing group, there's only so many brands and sub-brands that you can work on, right? And so that's kind of when I explored taking the leap, but that was a very, very, very scary thought because I love my team, I loved my work, but I kind of knew that there was something out there that I needed to scratch that itch. And so after multiple conversations and even talking to Justin and Garrett, they were like, oh, we thought you would have taken the leap like ages ago. And I was like, oh, well, that would be good to know. Like they saw it in me way before I saw it in myself. And so let's see, early 2019, I took that leap and I knew I wanted to be freelance, but I knew that I didn't want to work from home by myself because that's the part of my job at CoSchedule that I loved. I loved going to an office and having really talented coworkers that I could bounce ideas off of. And so that's when I first reached out to Ben, my co-founder, and a couple other designers in town who I just very much so admired. And I said, hey, what if we just have this like shared designer co-working space? We'll split rent, like it's almost like roomies in college, right? And thankfully they said yes. And we found the space that we're in today. And so that's really how it got started, was just a co-working space of designers. And it was really fun. But after like a year and a half, we kind of, again, each designer learned more specifically where they want their career to go. And so Ben and we sat 5 feet from each other and we had several conversations around how we saw an intersection between his and my strengths. And we both wanted to have a team someday. We knew that there wasn't a branding specific studio in North Dakota. And so we were like, you know what, this might be a need, meets our strengths, and like, let's go for it. So around late 2020, in that crazy, crazy year, that's when we officially teamed up. And then we hired our first teammate the following year. But that's the origin of how we got started and then how it kind of pivoted into what it is now.
That's incredible. I love your origin story because it feels very similar to like the Tellwell one, but there are some like really specific and I guess I don't know how old you are, but I will say more mature, if nothing else, because what I love is like you identified yours and Ben's strengths and then built a company off of that instead of being like, let's do everything. So that's the origin story. Who are the Good Kids of today?
The Good Kids of today, we're still in Bismarck in our space, but we're moving any day now. So that's exciting. Just waiting for some kinks to get ironed out from the landlord, but we're ready and we're excited. We're moving across the street, so we're not going very far. We love downtown. We all walk or scooter to the office, and so we can't lose that aspect of our daily life. But we have 7 folks on our team. We get to do a lot of amazing work, both in the state and beyond. So it's been quite a ride.
That's amazing. So being one of North Dakota's only branding, if not the only, like branding specific studio. Mm-hmm. What does branding mean to you?
Good question. I mean, branding to me is building a reputation around something and building a connection with those that they're trying to serve. So branding, you can build a brand in multiple ways. We specifically focus on the visuals and the messaging side of that. Of course, through video and other forms, you can build a brand too. But our specialty is really crafting that like first persona or that first identity that company uses. So typically that is a logo, it is their tagline, it's what is that root story that you're using. But that's kind of where our strategy services collide with our creative. And we really, really like to kind of set companies up for success with that really strong foundation.
So an organization comes to you and they say, Ashton, good kids, I want a new brand, build me a logo. What's your rebuttal?
My rebuttal is, what are your problems and what are your goals? And then we're going to work towards those. So we like to ask the questions before we find that singular solution. It might be a logo, but when we dig into the root cause of what's going on, maybe it is reputation. Maybe it is that they're known for something that they don't want to be known for. And we might be able to correct that problem through a logo change, but maybe we need to correct it through the messaging. So we try to work backwards and not say instantly that the logo is the problem. Sometimes it's obvious, right? Sometimes the logo, you can just tell that it's outdated, or, it's communicating sadness when it needs to communicate joy. Those are extreme examples. But sometimes the logo itself just needs like a little tweak, and everything else is what needs to be improved. So we're kind of flexible when we enter those conversations.
That's so great. I think one of the struggles that we've had recently is identifying and articulating that we're not a creative sweatshop. And I think that's something that's really difficult to change in the mind of, I'm going to say maybe older CEOs that are very used to that. Like, hey, we have a thing to execute on and you have the skill set to execute on it, go. Mm-hmm. And I think you guys have done a really, really masterful job of positioning yourselves as like experts and consultants who will like walk alongside them. And so what I'm wondering about is, I know you have a couple of case studies published on your website, but do you have any specific examples of that type of an organization that like really trusted you and like how you kind of helped them kind of like scoot along their brand journey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, this is timely because we just published one today that actually really fits the criteria of what you're saying. They're not older CEOs. They're an educational group, but they had a brand that was representative of all the teachers in the state. So the work that they do is really incredible. They basically support teachers so that they feel supported in their role, because teachers are so focused on making sure the kids feel good, right? And so they're the guide to the teacher. And they had a very outdated brand that really wasn't ever created from the start. But it wasn't just the logo. It was the name when we started digging into it. So their name was NDTSS, which stands for North Dakota Teacher Support System. But people didn't know what that abbreviation stood for, and there were other NDSs. So they would get confused all of the time. And the name really had nothing to do with, besides supporting those teachers, there was really no story. There was no emotional, compelling piece to like, what are we trying to do? Are we empowering these teachers? How are we communicating that? So we really had to, they had a hint and they came to us knowing that the name might need to be, moved on from, but it was an established name. They're kind of in the political government space. And so change is really hard and challenging. But we coached them through that. We had survey data from their teachers. So it wasn't just our opinion. It was, what are your teachers saying about the name and what does it represent? And we found some really good names that still, fit that structure of kind of the educational industry and even like the government political world. We didn't do Apple. That's not their name, right? That's too abstract. That's totally extreme from what they had. So we found a really good balance between what the industry demanded and a way to tell that story. And then of course the visuals were just kind of a cherry on top for us to be able to show that in the way that really kind of complements the name. But having that name being a part of the process, like really brought everything together. Because if we would have done just the creative around NDTSS, we probably would have been like 70% successful, because at some point that name just kind of brings you back or holds you back. And so it was really, really awesome to work with them, because they were super amazing clients. They were super receptive. It was a challenge when we decided we needed a new name. And then when we had the data and we had the new name, they still had that like fear, right? Of like, oh, this is such a big change. What if this, what if that? And so we really did have to consider all of the options before making that move. But at the end of the day, they're like, you know what? We have the logic here. We need to kind of like get past like our emotional attachment to that and take the risk. And so far they just have awesome results. So it's just been such a sweet success story for us.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Do you think like, is that like a unicorn client, or is that something that your team has been really purposeful in curating, like the resources and just even articulating who are the types of clients and the types of people that you want to work with? Was that purposeful or accidental?
I mean, it is very purposeful. I would say 80% purposeful, 20% luck, right? Like you don't know. I mean, you do your best to understand who the client is before they reach out, or you have that conversation and understand their personality and what they're looking for. But there's always that luck involvement, right? But I think purposeful in that we are very intentional with the type of, clients and problems that we want to accomplish, because we're a small team of 6 to 7 of us. And so we can't take on 50 projects a year. That's just not attainable for us. And so we get to be a little bit more specific in the niche and the type of work that we do. But also, I think the last probably year or two, we focused a lot on our internal process and trying to make the experience smooth for clients, because a lot of times, like I'm a design background as well. And when you get into that creative process, it can be really frustrating for a designer to just hear, I don't like it. And you're like, well, what the heck? Like, but why? And, there was all this meaning and story with it. But it's also equally frustrating for the client to feel like they don't like it and for them to not articulate why they don't like it, right? So it's how do we bridge that gap and kind of have a shared vocabulary around talking about these things? And also, how do we not surprise one another at any step of the process? Because sometimes too, right? Like let's share 3 concepts and then you're in love with all of them and the client sees them for the first time and they're just like, they hate it. And, that's just that your heart just sinks. So we've done a lot of work too to build up a process where it's these baby steps. And so there really is no surprises along the way, because they're a part of the conversation, they're part of the collaboration. So we've really tried to work out a lot of those kinks so that it's as smooth and as happy and as enjoyable for everybody involved, including the client.
I appreciate that so much. Excuse me, I got verklempt. I appreciate that so much, because I do think that clients want to be good. They want to be seen as good clients. They want to be a good partner in it. So for folks that might be listening, knowing that like our audience is primarily like small business owners, nonprofit leaders, those types of folks that want to be good partners to a creative studio, to an agency like ours. What do those characteristics look like? What does that client look like?
I mean, I think it helps if you, going into it, you know the goal that you're trying to accomplish, but you don't have a specific vision in mind. It's essential that you trust that professional that you're working with. And you might have ideas, you might have inspiration, but if you come in thinking, I want a logo that looks like this, like you're going to be disappointed. And so I think it's essential that you're focused on the goal and you have that trust in your partner to accomplish that. So that's number 1. Number 2 is defining the roles of your internal team. It can get really, really messy really fast with a lot of opinions in the room if that's not established. So we've recently started using the DACI model, where you have your driver. That's the person that makes sure that the meetings are scheduled. They have internal reviews. It's usually the PM of the team. Then we have our approvers, that's your decision makers. And we really request that both of those people are always in the meetings. We know that not everybody can, but we really think that those two roles should be. And then we have your contributors. Those are the folks like maybe it's a graphic designer on their internal marketing team, people that are going to be impacted. Maybe it's an HR person by the decisions, but they're not necessarily the final say. And then we have your informed. Large organizations, sometimes it's your C-suite. Sometimes it's folks that are just kind of taking a back seat. Maybe it's like a board member. So we really try to encourage our clients to label who those people are for our sake. So like we know who needs to be in the room and which opinions we need to weigh more so, but also for them so that they can remember, so-and-so maybe really feels a different way, but maybe they're just informed, they haven't been a part of the full conversation. So that's always helpful to have that established. And then just being responsive. It sounds really simple, but whenever we start a project, it's a very intense period of time. Usually our projects are anywhere from 2 to 6 months, and we have weekly deliverables. And so we really need to make sure that they're watching our work and our presentations, that we're meeting in a timely manner, that we're having those conversations. And the other thing we found too is having those conversations, feedback conversations are always, 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 always better in a meeting format. We've tried doing the email thing and the phone call thing, the comment thing, and it's so hard to communicate that way. And so we've recently changed to that format as well. And we've had way more valuable conversations. So those are the 3 to 4 things that come to mind as far as how to be a good client going into it.
That was gold. That should be a TED Talk about how creative studios should run. Because I would say I even took did you call it DACI or just DACI?
It's DACI. I'm not sure if they pronounce it DACI or DACI or whatever. Yeah. It's not unique to us. I think it's a Scrum model. But yeah, we started doing that and it's been amazing.
But just even that language and having kind of a theory behind some of these things, not only create clarity and kindness for both your team and the client, but also really reinforce the credibility of your team.
Sure.
That's incredible. I also really love, and I'm probably going to steal from you, that idea of not doing feedback sessions without it being in a meeting setting. Because I know that we have run into so many challenges where our creatives will make really purposeful decisions, but maybe that didn't make it into the creative brief. And did the client even read the creative brief before looking at the actual asset? Because they were so excited about whatever it was, whether it was branding concepts or a video project or whatever that is. So I love that. You should publish a blog on that. The 4 things. Absolutely, the 4 things you need to be a great client. So this has been kind of chock full of wisdom and chock full of some really fun things. I'm curious about your advice that you would have for fellow, I'm going to say creative entrepreneurs. And as I say creative entrepreneurs, we know that executive directors in the nonprofit space are incredibly creative, right? We know that even our small business owners, they're incredibly creative. And it's not always easy to be that person in charge to, what do they say? Heavy is the head that wears the crown and all that jazz.
Yes.
But from your perspective, what advice do you have for those folks who are leading organizations and trying to think of things a little bit differently and a little bit more creatively?
Yeah, I think the main thing that has really helped us, because we're turning 5 this year, so we're still kind of a baby company in that way. But the thing that's been really helpful for us is to have a business coach. We've been partnering with some type of business coach, I would say the last 2 or 3 years, and they've really helped us, I feel we probably would have figured things out, but we figured things out a lot faster by learning from someone who's experienced and who's done that. And so I do think it's important to find a business coach who's actually done what you're trying to achieve, because there's a lot of people that speak and talk, and that's great. But I think if you can find somebody in your industry or, somewhere near what you're doing, that's going to be gold.
By the way, if you want to give a shout out to that person, I do believe they're like the episode before you.
Oh, really? Perfect. Well, our business coach right now is John Meyer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was just on last episode, and he's incredible. I'm such a huge John fan.
Yes, shout out to John and Lead More. Like I said, he led the Lemonly team in South Dakota. So not only was he leading a creative team, but it was in the Midwest. It was a studio. So just tons of gold from him. And even my second piece of that is find a coach that is strong in the things that you're not. So I have a designer background. So does Ben. So we didn't naturally have any sort of business classes or salesmanship or how do we manage people. Like those are things that we never imagined for ourselves in our career. We thought we were going to be the designer technicians or maybe creative directors someday, but that was not a part of the plan. And so the beauty in having John as our coach is that he did lead the sales and the business side of his company. And so it feels almost like we have a third co-founder, a part of our organization who can really speak to that area and grow us in that area. So find somebody in your industry and then find someone who's experienced in the skill set that you're not.
That's incredible advice. And I know in my work with coaches, I have found that the closer they are to the work that you do, the better the better off you will be, because like the content is just so much more relevant. Like I had one coach who was incredible, and she was designer for I think the largest tech company in the country, and like led all these like incredible initiatives and those types of things. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the things that was a bit of a struggle was that some of the directness that they would have being in a large tech company, like it's not Midwest nice, right? Like, and
there's a different,
there is very much like a geographical and just like a difference in that. And so I love that advice. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And John specifically helps creative entrepreneurs. So I guess if that's you and you're listening, definitely reach out.
We'll keep his link right underneath. So
perfect.
Ashton, as you're kind of wrapping up your first 5 years, your first half a decade, first of all, congratulations. That's so exciting. The next 5 years are going to go so incredibly fast. I can guarantee you that, because we are at the end of our second half of a decade.
Nice.
But where do you see the Good Kids going in the next 5 years?
The next 5 years. So our goal is to have a team of like 10 to 12 folks. So we want to grow, but we definitely don't want to be a 20 to 60 person agency. We want to keep it small so that we have maybe 6-person teams within the team, if that makes sense. Because we do want to have regional and national clients. So we need to be big enough that we can support that tier of a client. But we want to be small enough where Ben and I still get to be in all of those meetings. We are filled in and everybody on the team can still have a voice and really have an impact on the work that we're doing. And we just like the small team culture. There's memes and GIFs and inside jokes that happen that I just don't want to lose by scaling too much. So I would think that's kind of the two missions, is to just grow our team a little more and then, just raise the bar and the caliber of work that we're doing.
I appreciate that for so many different reasons, but are we at 14, 15, somewhere right in there right now?
Sure.
And I would say a very similar approach where we can specialize a little bit. So our video team is 5, our design team is 4, and then we have a project management team that supports both of those. Nice. And what I love about that is you do get some of that subject area expertise, but also the challenge within those teams to grow and develop and just create better products.
Yeah, when they're small and I think when you're on a small team, you feel more empowered and you feel like you can make like your voice is heard, right? And so I don't know, it's being on a small team at CoSchedule and Today Made way back when, before they were CoSchedule, like that was a piece of the puzzle that was really important to me. So I hope we can continue that with the Good Kids.
Yeah. So, Ashton, final question, but as you reflect on a pretty incredible career so far, from being a foundational part of North Dakota's fastest growing startup, to the incredible work that you're doing at the Good Kids and the team that you're building, to even having a partner who's a fellow creative, as you think about like the incredible life that you've built in Bismarck and in North Dakota so far, like, I'm curious, what are you grateful for?
Oh man, that's a big question because there's so many things. I'm very grateful that I've been put in rooms where I'm not the smartest, that I have people that I can look up to and learn from, people that are more talented than me. So that's been huge because I'm naturally like that kind of annoying achiever. Like I always am kind of going after the next thing, and I don't really celebrate those milestones along the way. I really have to challenge myself to do that. So I really like, watching people succeed and accomplish their big dreams. And I feel like I got to do that really early on in my career. And then very grateful for the Bismarck community too. I feel like being in North Dakota in kind of that like mid-sized city, it's like they say it all the time, but it's truly is like a big small town where it doesn't take long to build your network in your community. And you do have to put yourself out there, no doubt, but it doesn't take long to build that web. And with business, it's all about who you know. And so I just feel like all of the connections I've made along the way is what has really, like, even before we started the Good Kids, it was that foundation for being able to survive the first 5 years and the ups and downs and the everything in between. And so the people in the community is definitely essential. And then I have to give a shout out to my family too, because my husband's a creative entrepreneur as well. And, so we get to have a lot of those conversations after hours. And I feel like if I married teacher, shout out to the teachers, but we just wouldn't get each other's world, It's a different stress leading a company and leading a team. So he's been a huge support. And, my parents have always been my number one fans. His family is incredible. So I feel very fortunate to have the family support too.
Amen. Ashton, it was so lovely chatting with you. I have been a fan from afar. I think like the first time that we actually got to hang out was after the Addies, like a couple of years ago. And it was so fun because I felt a little fangirlish. Also, I had already had like 3 old fashions at that point. And I was just like, oh my God, is this Ashton? So I so appreciate the conversations that we've gotten to have since, which haven't been that many, but I was also so excited when you said yes to coming on the podcast. So I'm really grateful for that. I'm grateful for the work that you do and leading a team of, I'm going to say very Tellwell-like, where you care so much about the work and the people, and you're doing it the right way.
Thank you. I really appreciate that because, of course, I was familiar with you guys and your work and looked up to you. So for you to feel like you're fangirling is kind of funny to me. But I love it. And yeah, cheering you on from afar.
Ashton, if people want to find you or want to find the Good Kids, throw out the socials.
I'm probably most active on LinkedIn these days. So Ashton Hauff, Hauff on LinkedIn. Good Kids is either on LinkedIn or Instagram, or we have our website. That's really where we post all of our case studies, which are my particular favorite because we really try to show everything behind the curtain on those. So yeah.
Definitely go give Ashton a follow on LinkedIn. I find the content so helpful, and there have been at least a half a dozen times over the last year where I'm like, dang it, why didn't I think of that? So the resources are incredible. The case studies are so fun and visually interesting to dig into. So keep up the good work. I am really excited to see what the next 5 years is for the Good Kids.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for having me, and hopefully we can keep the conversation going.
You're dang right. Thanks, Ashton. Hey, Storymakers, thanks for listening to Tellwell the Podcast. We're so excited that you tuned in for this episode. If you found this episode helpful, if you got any nuggets of wisdom from it, we'd love for you to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that's how this message gets out. If you're interested in having Tellwell help you share your story, just reach out to us at wetellwell.com or reach out in the comments. We'll make sure that we're listening and we will reach back out. On behalf of my co-host Duncan Williamson and myself, thanks so much for being a story maker, and keep sharing your stories.
If we hold tight, we can chase the Mississippi through the night, hundreds of miles away. The water is warm, let's dip our